It is now my pleasure to introduce you Wojciech Stefaniak, is for the Poznan Supercomputing Center, and he is going to introduce us the application, the use case we have on life science that they are developing there. We are supposed to use in the ADMIRE project. Okay, thank you, Wojciech, and you can start as you prefer.
Thank you for the introduction. I am Wojciech, and yes, I am from PSNC, and we are developing. We have developed application from life sciences. And from the start, I would like to give a little bit of motivation about our project. We are targeting polyglutamine diseases and the diagnosis of those polyglutamine diseases. Those diseases are genetic diseases, but are far less common than the most popular Alzheimer or Parkinson's. However, they are still a part of this neurodegenerative diseases. And what's more to say, they are quite well defined in terms of symptoms. And we do know that those symptoms which are physical, which appear on the outside of the human body, are in the very late stage of the disease. And the changes which are happening in neurons in human brain are earlier in the development of the disease. What is more, we are targeting by this project 9 genetic diseases, which are listed here, which one of which is, I think, quite popular, Huntington disease. And aside of the part that they all degenerate brain, they have a common type of mutation. And this is having more than 26 repetitions of CAG sequences in our gene. To maybe talk a little less biological and to give more context and sense to all this stuff, let's see at 2 examples of mice brain. On the left, we have mice brain that is healthy, and on the right, of course, we have a very contrastive example of degenerated brain. On the left, we can see that there are a lot of Purkinje neurons in our cerebellum. We can see that the dendrite net is really dense. Those dendrites are thick, and this is how the healthy dendrites look. On the right side, we can see that there are far less Purkinje neurons. The dendrites are thin and not so dense. I would say that this example is quite contrastive. So normally we deal with far less negligible examples, and they are not so obvious, of course. But to give you some context, how those changes are, how these changes are, yeah, here it is. So now we can establish our project pipeline. So we start with data collection using Opera microscope, thanks to our associates from Polish Academy of Science. Then starts our part. So the first thing we do is we apply surf algorithm. This is first part of pre-processing. We get raw data from our microscopes and we get high resolution images. I will get into the details how it works, how is it scalable later. After surf algorithm, we get really big images that we have to feed into neural network. So it is normal to cut those images because they are really large. I would say 10K by 10K pixels. So now it's not possible to feed them in neural networks. Of course, there is some pre-processing due to faulty data collection. Sometimes Opera microscope does not focus well on the brain tissue, so it focuses somewhere else, and we get gray and black images. So we perform a dropout of those noisy images, and then sometimes we use class balancing. It's because we have far less examples of sick examples than healthy examples. After then, when we have all of the data gathered, we are writing it to TF records. Then after we established our files of TF records, we then read from them and perform machine learning with parallel computing using Horovod with OpenMP. And after looking at this pipeline and the pipeline that Surpi have given us, we could say that our applications are quite similar. We all perform data collection. We all have part of pre-processing. We also use TensorFlow with TF records to store our files. And we also use Horovod with OpenMP. So I think the problems will be quite the same. I will not get into very details of this surf algorithm, because I think that's not the case here to present. But to give a little bit of knowledge about it, we are starting from having a Z-stack of high-resolution images. It looks like it because we have just an image on top of image on top of image, and we have about 100 images from one sample. After collecting this Z-stack, we are performing surf algorithm, which is computational quite heavy, but fortunately it is enhanced on GPU. It involves computing gradients, checking gradients, convergence, so there is a lot of math underneath it. But as you see here, the results are quite sharp, and that's good for our neural network, which will happen in a bit. After that, there is also a second focus of our project, which is not included in the ADMIRE, is to make a super resolution pictures of the whole mice brain, which you can see here, but yeah, that's not a real focus with ADMIRE. And the last part that we are doing is machine learning using 4 GPU Teslas. As I said earlier, we are using TensorFlow, TF records to store our data, Horovod to parallelize our computation with support of NCCL, NVIDIA's library, and OpenMP. So let's start from the beginning of our pre-processing, and this is surf algorithm. It is written in Java. It processes very large images, and thankfully, as I said, it is enhanced by GPU. However, there is a lack of scalability, which I will present in a bit. And the only way to scale this application is to, which is not so great. We have to just invoke a lot of those applications, each application using its own GPU, and process it this way. So maybe let's start from why it does not scale. Here we can see on the left the processing time of one image in respect to number of cores. You can see there is not much of a difference between one core or 32. On the right, we can see how many time it takes to process one image. in respect to how many GPUs we have. And here, this graphic is better, but it has to be said that we are covering here the scenario where we are invoking several instances of this application, of this surf application. When we try to allocate more GPUs to perform computation on one image, so if our application uses more than one GPUs, the results are like the CPU results. So yeah, that's the main problem here. I see that there are some questions, or no? Okay. Okay, so let's dig deeper why this application is not scaling. As we see here on the top, the memory consumption is really big. We can see that there is some kind of iterative process which is happening underneath it. But the main focus stands on threads and CPU load. You can see that there is one main thread which is marked by green color, and two in a small amount of time, and one thread going in parallel. This yellow thread is a thread done by us. It is simply a progress bar to show how further into compilation, into calculations we are, because this application lacked this kind of feature to show where we are in our calculations. And here we can see CPU load, which for the most part of applications stands about 6.25% to 6.5%. And we allocated 16 CPUs. So if we can see that we use just one CPU, and all other CPUs are idle. Then we investigated if we are spending time in good places in this application. On the left and on the right, they are the same results, but from the processing of different images. On the left, we have a smaller image, and on the right, we have a bigger image. On the left, we can see that we spent on calculation about 80%. On the right, we see that we spent about 93%. So as the image increases in size, the calculation time increases, and all those smaller times which are not that significant to our applications are decreasing. So that's good, and we didn't investigate further. I will not cover everything that Surbi covered, for example, explaining how TF records, not TF records, but how Horovod works, but maybe I will stop for a bit in TF records. TF records is a binary storage format that's optimized to use with TensorFlow API. It takes, thanks to the thing that this is a binary storage format, it takes less space on disk and takes less time to copy and read. Right now, we are storing our TF records on Lustre, and there is possibility. We are not using it yet, but I think now that we dig deeper into how our application works, I think we will try it. There is a possibility of making parallel reads using TF records. So we can divide our dataset into shards and produce more batches per second using these functions. There is also possibility of dataset caching, but as Surbi, we didn't implement that yet. Maybe let's talk a bit also about TF data dataset, because this is how we feed our data into our machine learning. So it involves some key features of this whole pipeline. TF data dataset is a really fast data generators that uses functions such as shard to divide dataset into shards. Shuffle, for perfect shuffle, we would have to shuffle all the data just to randomly choose the data that we learn from. Repeat, to enable reusing dataset samples. As you know, each epoch we are using all of the samples of our dataset. If we want to make more epochs, we have to reuse them. So then the repeat function, function comes in handy. Prefetch, which is one of the key components of this pipeline. Previously, when we have dealt with image generators in TensorFlow, it was not optimal because we would prepare batch of data, then it would be consumed by the neural network. And after consuming it by the neural network, the next batch of data would have started to be generated. Now we are prefetching it, so we are starting preparing our next batch of data during using the previous batch of data by neural network. Also, there is a feature called autotune, which will tune parameters of some of those functions during runtime to our hardware, to our needs. But yeah, there are a lot of features in TF dataset, but is it really that faster than image generator? As we see, we have a normal producer-consumer relationship here. And normally, if we would have one GPU, it wouldn't be a problem. But the more GPUs we have, the more consumers we have. And if we want to make those consumers happy, the producer have to work fast. And using image generator is not an efficient way to do it. As you see, I have done some quick tests on my private laptop and on Lustre, where I have stored a sample dataset. When we are using image generator, it takes a lot more time than using TF data. So by doing this benchmark, I would already say that TF data is much faster. But what's the second thought of this whole benchmark is that using Lustre to store our data is far less optimal than using image generator and doing caching. So that's why we are looking to maybe implement some ad hoc storage systems or caching of our data set if this data set is not big enough to not fit into our memory. As I said, I won't get into the details of Horovod because I think that was already covered. But maybe let's just say that the Horovod uses ring-all-reduce mainly, and broadcast and all-gather MPI processes, I would say, MPI features. And the main reason we use Horovod is to make our computation parallel to converge faster with our training, because we can divide our data set into shards. All of those shards are processed by another GPUs. And then when we train it, we can gather all information, all knowledge from different workers from different GPUs and gather it so the GPUs learn also what other GPUs, what other workers have learned. So the convergence of the training is just faster. The processing of data is faster. And about profiling our case, because of lack of scalability of self algorithm and the tendency of changing of our pre-processing, we decided to profile only a part of our pipeline, and it would be pipeline reading from TF records and then machine learning with parallel computing. This would be the part that we profile for our first iteration. And as you can see, there is some kind of initialization here, some small processes. Then we are dealing with NCCL and Horovod backend, starting communication. And after that, we are mainly reading data and learning. Here you can easily see that there are some processes like copying memory from hosted device, so IO processes that take quite some time. Aside of that, a lot of NVIDIA processes, NCCL and Horovod activities in the backend. Also, what we have expected to see in MPIs, MPI calls, we see MPI all gather, all reduce, barrier, or broadcast. So all of those that are really well described on Horovod side, what we have really expected from our application. We have also tried to use another tools like NVVP tracing using NVIDIA tracing program. It just makes, for me, for example, it makes it more eye-friendly, I would say. But we can see also that NCCL OReduce is working here. A lot of GPU computation, some smaller copying to memory or from memory. Yeah, so I would say pretty much the same context, the same scenario as in the previous application. About the CPU malleability extensions, there are concerns, of course, because our applications are either not scalable by increasing number of CPUs or changing it. I would say that if we wanted to use multi-threading in this application, in this serve application, we would it would take a lot of time. We mainly utilize GPU. We use CPU during our serve algorithm and our pre-processing. We mainly use Python and Java code. And yeah, the last thing that we worry about is that Horovod takes OpenMP, and maybe integrating FlexMPI with Horovod would be really hard. About ad hoc storage systems, I think that it would benefit great to us if we had ad hoc storage system, because we can see here that there are some small gaps in the processing of our GPUs, and this is what I what I discovered recently after profiling, after digging into our application, that we have small times when our GPU is not working because it is probably waiting on next batch. So that is the place where caching or ad hoc storage system for our dataset would come in handy. And that's all from me. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Lotte. I don't know if there are questions. I have one comment and one question. I mean, when we talk about malleability, not only think about malleability in CPU. I mean, in our project, actually, we also talk about storage malleability. So this puntualization for the ad hoc storage system is also well addressed, and also for the previous presentation. I mean, maybe one application cannot be a good application for CPU malleability, but we can exploit storage using ad hoc storage system well. So this is, we have both targets, and hopefully we can join together in the same application. That would be great. That shouldn't be the main point. So now you are executing also Horobot and use Python and Java code. I understood that you cannot use GPUs because sorry, you cannot use only GPU in one step because the images are very big. This is right, or I am wrong?
No, we don't use GPU more than one GPU because it does not scale in serve algorithm, because we are talking about serve algorithm, right? The question is, yes. So when we allocate more GPUs, it does not scale. This is how the application is written. It benefits only from one GPU. Adding more than one GPU just doesn't change anything. So what we came up is that we can just make more instances of this application, and we just run 4 or 8 applications in parallel, each computing its own image. Each application is working on another image.
Yeah. Okay. That was to be my question. So I understand you are running one image for one GPU, but then you are running several images in parallel, no? Many images in parallel.
Yes, yes, we are running in parallel, but we are instantiating these applications also in parallel several times. So on the first GPU, we have serve application 1, and we are working on image 1. Then on GPU 2, we have serve application 2 and working on image 2. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Some more questions? No questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I was just curious that at the end of it, do you also want to integrate all of your results of images, or you want to collect it independently?
Could you repeat, because I didn't hear it?
Yeah, that at the end of it, that you want to collect the results of all of the image implementations together, or they are supposed to be run independently? Or you at some point want to have integration of the results?
In the serve application?
Yeah.
No, they are run independently because this is just a pre-processing step. So it is kind of applying some transformations, for example, to the image. If you once apply the transformation, the image is just transformed. It is more accessible for neural network, but we don't need to gather some kind of knowledge between those processes.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
More questions? I have another question related to storage. I mean, you are reading the images and then you are storing the result And the result is transfer. You also store the images in the intermediate steps, or just results, or what is the output of the application? I mean,
output of the application is also checkpoints, as Surbi said here. We also are making checkpoints, so we are the main outcome of this is just diagnosis of whether the image is healthy or sick.
okay.
I don't know if I answered your questions. Maybe you could rephrase it, or.
No, it's right. It's right. So basically,
Okay.
you are analyzing the imaging to see the diagnostic, but in between you are making checkpointing just for tolerance. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I have. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, can you say
Okay.
your name, please?
Shabazz.
Yeah.
So I have a question regarding just a comment that these two applications are Python based, and the next stage that we are going to take in the project, if I'm talking about that ADMIRE project, for the malleability, to introduce malleability on to see the feasibility in terms of implementation of these applications. So as the Flex MPI is only supporting mostly the C and C++ implementations, how can we take the Python-based implementations? So this is my concern. Maybe Jesus, you can comment on that.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Concerning this Flex MPI for the malleability.
No. Don't get confused with Flex MPI. Flex MPI is the implementation we have now to provide malleability. Okay. But in parallel now, we are playing with SLAM, pure SLAM, without using Flex MPI. And the idea is to provide also these possibilities to the applications. So if you are using Python or you are using C++ or anything like that, we could try to malleability using SLAM directly.
Okay.
Creating more or reducing the number of processes without using Flex MPI. So Flex MPI is our platform we have right now, but this has not we are not forced to have Flex MPI as our last malleability, CPU malleability implementation.
Okay.
Actually, we have something similar. So in that case, if we have Python or other kind of processes, should be the same.
Okay. Thanks.
More questions? Okay. So thank you, Bodjek, for your presentation.
Thank you for the questions.
Finishing the recording right now.